allow this process to work at two levels. One is the technical level, but the other one is about enhancing the credibility of the process. Okay. You know, and that's important, so that even if, like I said, the verification of the 40,000 forms does not really have an impact on the final result that is going to be announced, it is still a part of an important part of our process, because it continues to enhance credibility. Now, it is very clear that between the time this process started and now, there really hasn't been anything that has been shown that puts the credibility of that process in doubt.
Yes.
And that should say something. And that's why I say that part of the problem in Kenya is that we're very good at noticing what is difficult and what is negative, but we're very difficult, we find it very difficult to affirm that which is right. If you remember 2007, it was almost, if you read even the Kriegler report, a good maybe 30–40% of the forms that came to KICC that time had problems. Many had been changed, some were not signed. 10 years later, 40,000 forms, and so far we have not had a complaint of a substantive variation in that process. Surely we need to be able to say, even though there are many mistakes we have made, I mean, we're not a perfect system, and anybody who expects a perfect system from an imperfect people is very naive. But we have made some movements that we need to affirm. Does that mean so, therefore, that this election will now all be very happy and move on? Maybe not, because I think we're trying to solve what is essentially a social and political problem with a technical process. So that even if the election is technically sound, and I think it is, that hasn't solved some deeper problems. Some of those problems were resolved in 2010 with the introduction of devolution. But it's clear that there are still people who feel excluded and like they're not, and they need the presidency for them to feel inclusion. A lot of that actually is sold by politicians because that's the way they get votes. The reality is there are some shifts we have made in terms of including people. We still have a long distance to go, but I think that at the technical level, we have done ourselves proud, and we need to affirm it and to celebrate it.
Prof.
I am not quite sure if I agree, because for me...
What do you disagree with?
For me, the technical aspects, the administrative aspects of this election have been handled fairly effectively. Establish polling stations, put ballot boxes there,
and
establish queues, what I call the hardware. That has been done. The software, the part whereby you must make a link between the hardware, the software, and the voter. That is what, to me, has been handled badly.
So what exactly in this process was handled badly?
For example, when we establish that you are going to get a report from 34A going to 34B, I thought that was being handled per constituency. All right? IEBC did not handle it like that. They simply began streaming figures without sufficient clarification. And that's what I was saying earlier about tidiness. Sufficient clarification so that you could say in Stare, this is what happened at the polling station, and this is what is available at the constituency.
So if I'm getting what you're saying correctly, you're saying before the results started streaming,
yes,
someone, even if it's at the bomber, should have said, we're getting results from here, and this is the form 34A, this is form 34B, and this is why we are putting these results here.
Yes.
Okay.
Let me explain, and I think that's something Kenyans have not understood.
Please help us to understand.
Yeah, you know, these processes that IEBC is following were required by law.
Okay.
What the law said is this: the minute the elections are announced at the polling station, that result must immediately be transmitted electronically to the National Tally Center. One. Number two, the IEBC must set up a national portal through which they will show those results. There was no requirement to show the forms because the forms are the background information. Those were not the results. Those are not the results on the basis of which IEBC was going to announce.
So IEBC was acting on the results they were getting in their system.
As soon as they get in the system was supposed to, actually that portal was supposed to be the minute the results come, they are streamed. They are streamed automatically. That is what the law says. Now, what was then supposed to happen is that those Form 34As You take them to the constituency. They were not coming to Bomas for purposes of verification.
So you take them to the constituency to generate from 34B.
To generate for 34B.
Yes.
Because that is a final result. Now, the problem is people, that's why I said we sometimes leave looking at the rear view mirror. Because verification always used to happen at Bomas, we started saying IEBC is not verifying. There was never an intention for IEBC to verify 40,000 forms before they are streamed. It is not practical. Because then what you are saying, because those forms came in almost within the first 2 hours, because that's when the counting happens. What you are saying is that IEBC needed to have a workforce to actually go through each of those forms before it was not practical. So the intention was stream it, but that is not the final result. The final result is based on verification at the constituency.
In the interest of clarity, IEBC did not need these forms to start streaming these numbers.
They did not need to. In fact, I can read for you the regulation. It did not require. It was not required.
Okay.
Let me tell you where they were required. Before they announce the result, before they announce this final result, the regulations require that they will verify the Form 34As and Form 34Bs. But that is now the actual forms. Those are not the ones that are sent by scan. These are the ones that are actually the physical forms.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kibe, why are you laughing? Because it's just, okay, it's all bubbled up.
The reason why I'm laughing is actually to see that it is possible that, remember, first of all, I was against these decisions of the Court of Appeal.
Where the final result is at the constituency level.
Is at the constituency level. So that what I find amazing is that NASA, who largely supported that decision, I'm actually surprised that they are at Bomas rather than at the constituencies. Because whatever comes, the perfect job of IEBC is purely clerical. Yet we are assuming that Bomas of Kenya is a theater of action. There is no theater of actions at Bomas of Kenya. So that strictly speaking, and I repeated that, we are chasing the wind at Bomas. Because the real action, the moment they receive the 290 from 34B, then it is a clerical job, which you can even give to any standard date to tell you this adds up to what, and you declare the result. And any dispute about that is supposed to go to the Supreme Court. And therefore, that's why that the last 4 years, it reminds me of the arguments that people used to talk about, is the Section 47 of the Constitutions, where people who have never read what Section 47 used to say about, they could engage you in a 3-hour debate about Section 47. It's a similar thing now that we seem to be doing with 34A.
No, but that's the purpose of this conversation. So we're trying to help Kenyans understand what's going on.
So that in the long and short of it is this. Kenyans, those who want a quick result, should pray that we get Form 34B in the soonest time possible and a declaration made. And those who think there is a problem with this one should tell us, out of these 290 Form 34B, which are the problematic ones.
Or which ones do you have that differ with what?
Yes. For me, until we reach there,
and even
it looks like a circus.
Even then, even if you get them, there is nothing IEBC
can do.
Prof.
Okay, that's why you find it funny.
We are all now being trampled into legalese. They all just want us to go. You see, my approach, Oganjo, is data collected from the field must be segregated according to various transmission groups. Now, once you take data in a different category, you mix it together with all sorts of pieces together, you transmit it and block, all right? You create uncertainty.
That's true.
Gradually, it creates problems with the interpretation of a result. I'm coming from a research perspective. And for me, I agree entirely with the lawyers about the importance of those things. Now, what I also want them to listen to is that data that is clumsily managed, all right, tends to disobey the legal arrangements.
In fact, Prof, there's one thing I would agree with you. And sorry.
We need to let Daisy say something.
Daisy, let me just agree with something, Prof. There's one mistake that I think the process at Bomas made on that transmission. I think that information should have included where the results are coming from. And that would not have been in breach of the regulations. And I no, it's true. I think it would have been helpful because remember that this process was supposed to give people confidence in the process. So that would have been helpful so that then you can see that where these results are coming. But that is not because that would have determined the integrity of the result. But it was important in terms of management of information. But it is not, let me keep emphasizing, that any political party or candidate that did not invest any agents in the constituency has no business in investing in a tally center at the national office. At the national tally center. It did not make a difference. Even if you found errors, there's nothing IEBC can do.
Anything,
the most you can do is you have to go to the Supreme Court. So there's a sense in which I'm saying that we are stuck in the 207 process, and we haven't recognized that we have moved on and devolved elections. Many of us were unhappy with the with the Court of Appeal decision. I still think it is bad law. We cannot hold these commissioners responsible for an election over which they can do nothing about. Because none of us know the returning officers. But if something goes wrong in this election, Chebukati and Chiloba will be remembered into infamy for having done wrong in something there is nothing they can do about. So I'm just saying that there's something we did wrong there in insisting.
We need to undo it.
We need to undo it and actually recognize, let's not assume that the problems in elections only happens at Bomas. It happens in the constituencies. In fact, it happens more in the constituencies because we vote regionally, we all have a stake in actually dealing with the election in favor of our candidate. So there are some mistakes that we have learned from this process that I think we need to go back to the drawing board and review. Sorry, Daisy.
It's okay.
Finally.
Finally. Although Kamodo actually picked up what I wanted to say.
That
in transmitting those results, IEBC should have actually considered, number one, indicating, one, that they were provisional results, number two, where they were coming from. But because they were just coming in without any clear explanation of exactly where they were coming in and whether they were the final results, whether they were the ones that the constituency were declaring, it created room for confusion. And in any election, we know there are winners and there are losers.
Obviously.
And when you have a clear process that people can interact with, even when you are losing, difficult as it may be, you actually get a sense of closure. Now, what this has done, it has opened us up to questions and answers and brought a lot of confusion that is unnecessary. Because it is true. IEBC, by the way, IEBC communicated to Kenyans. They said it time and time again that they will not be announcing anything.
Yeah, the periodic announcements would not be
there.
There
will be no periodic announcements. In fact, the only thing that they were doing was press conferences. But in terms of how the results were coming in, I think Ezra was very clear. He said that there was a monitor where the streaming would be done. But the manner in which it was being done and the manner in which the media have communicated to the people, where it is just a stream of numbers without any clarity of what these numbers mean.
So the media should also have been
because I imagine, yes, breaking it down and letting people know these are provisional results. These are coming either from the streams or from the constituency. That way you are able to know whether it is, because the constituency is the final. And they are right. Whatever will be announced here, IEBC, that's all they are going to do. There's nothing that is going to change by the time it's getting to Bomas. You want to change it, you change it at the constituency or by court.
Actually, just a clarification. When you read that judgment of the Court of Appeal, they took issue with the regulations that are still in the regulation of IEBC that was describing these results as provisional. Because the whole idea that results were provisional was that subject to verifications by IEBC, you could change it. But now the case, yes. Even at the IEBC level. For example, if IEBC found that there is a big inconsistency and this does not add up. But you see, this is exactly where now those of us who are critical of the decision said, the idea where IEBC finds that there is something wrong and people are all looking at, which is now what is actually happening physically, that everybody is expecting IEBC to do something right at Bomas. Yet the truth is, and that's why sometimes you see me laughing at it, that everything right to be done is supposed to be done at the constituency.
There's very little, in other words, there's very little IEBC can do.
Yes, so that
IEBC at the national.
So that effectively, an electoral process should be easy to understand because the voter is not expected to be a lawyer. Okay? So that this is an election, unfortunately, courtesy of the Court of Appeal, that only lawyer seems to be understanding that what is happening here is a circus. So every other person is investing their emotions, is investing their time in something that is neither here nor there, including the candidates themselves. So that even you have a decision that has not been understood by the candidates, has not been understood even by the media, so that only a few people can actually be able to say, after interrogating the system, that there is no problem. And I'm uncomfortable with that. Because I am for the idea whereby now somebody can be able to say, IEBC can be able to say, hang on a minute, if there is anything wrong in this election, we are going to do something about it. But the truth of the matter, something that Maina Kenya and others
hold on.
never told the Wananchi.
Kibe, hold on. I think there's a presser right now, an announcement by IEBC. Let's cross over and listen to Ezra Chiloba.